Progress.
Can Renaissance Explorers make me the co-host? That works too. All right, welcome to another episode of Renaissance Explorers. Fortunately, no one else has volunteered to ground us in today, so I'll take it over. We can do a round of breathing. So as always, stand up, make yourself some room, get a little bit spacious. If you don't feel like standing up, then just make sure you're really pulling your shoulders back. Letting those lungs get nice and full. Got to remember to take full deep breaths throughout the day. So if nothing else, this is just one moment to make sure we're deep breathing. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take about 70 full deep breaths. After that, hold your breath all the way out. So it looks like hold it out and just relax and see how long you can sit in that silence of nothing. So no breathing in, no breathing out, just hold it. And don't force all your air out either. Just let it kind of collapse on its own and just fall into that bliss. And then after you can't hold your breath anymore, then take a big full deep breath in, as big as you can, really expanding the lungs, helping them bring in more oxygen and more capacity. Really making sure that all the chambers of your lungs are really full of air, and then hold that in for about 30 seconds, let it out, and then we will enjoy that bliss. So let's go. I'm going to turn my video off. And full deep breaths. Now we're going to do about 20 full, deep, complete breaths. Pick up the pace a little bit. Big, full, deep breath in if you haven't already. Really expanding the lungs. Right. Gotta stop doing those. I get so relaxed. I just want to sit there for an hour. All right. Today's session, we're going to do a little bit of a choose your own adventure. There's a couple different paths that we can take today. Before I kick us off, though, Michael actually had something he wanted to share. So I'm going to pass it over to him to give him some space to do that.
Thanks, Rocky. Very brief, just that we had our first meeting of a somewhat political party that we're kicking off in South Africa, but the idea is to create a movement of movements and a bit of a marketplace between them. So we're definitely talking about seeds, but we're keeping the implementation of seeds very, very simple. It was just mind-blowing to me. So we had 17 people here in person, 4 people online, representing 12 different groups in South Africa who all want some kind of systemic change, and everybody was just blown away. It was a very, very moving experience for everyone that was here. So expect some big things to start coming from South Africa. I was, blown away by the response from everybody, much, much better than I expected. So there's some good stuff happening here. It was all very exciting.
Can you clarify why it's better than you expected?
It started about a month ago with my sisters saying to me, look, we must do something here in South Africa. And this is moving a little bit away from the seeds model of having, funding specific regeneration projects. This was much more in response to people who are fed up with what the government is doing, mask wearing, vaccines, all that kind of stuff. Every country is frustrated with that. So I said, it should be relatively easy to do, but I'm skeptical. I don't think anybody will actually step up and do something. Everybody's, very quick to bitch and moan and complain, but are there any people that are willing to take some risks? And so I said, well, let's do it and just see what happens. I expected maybe 2 or 3 people to come, but, just everyone who was there kept saying, this is exactly what's needed. It was just heartwarming. So as I said, it was the first meeting. We still don't know exactly where this is going to go, but everybody agreed what's the best way of getting other movements involved. There's, as in every country, there's a whole lot of movements who want to do something. They're all doing it independently. But how do you create a meta story and a narrative under which everybody feels comfortable coming together as a very valuable piece of the jigsaw puzzle? And that was the thing that surprised me. This real deep design, no matter how different each of these individual groups were, they could see the seed story being a very, very powerful meta narrative.
Yeah, I mean, I asked why was that surprising, because I think we don't market it this way, or certainly we don't speak about this too much for maybe some obvious reasons. But that's exactly how I see seeds, and what excites me the most about it, and why I'm so focused on it is because I see it being able to, bridge those barriers that other communities can, typically put up. And I'm a little bit of a radical optimist that I feel that a lot of people, where they didn't take action before, it might have been because we knew that action wasn't actually going to help. So when a lot of causes come up and they're like, well, this is the cause, get behind this and change will happen. So many times throughout our short history, people would get behind that message, dedicate their lives sometimes to a cause, and then nothing actually changes. So I think there's a state of, that I would call it wisdom at this point rather than apathy. It's more, don't just do something, but stand there and wait until the right something comes along. And I think that's what continues to drive me and motivate me with, within Seeds is folks being able to show up and see that this is that something, because it goes deep enough and goes foundational enough that it can have that capacity for real systems change. Where, typically like a revolution and going out and screaming and yelling or asking our politicians to do something differently just feels like, a whole lot of wasted energy, and why bother? Or even the idea of, change your personal behaviors and habits. Like, yes, that's going to have an impact. Let's do that. But when, corporate emissions and military emissions are like orders of magnitude more than all of individual actions combined, then you begin to understand that, like, okay, individual action isn't actually going to, be a systemic change unless that individual action leads to a new type of system rather than a different behavior within an, existing system that's inherently destructive. Anyway, I'd love that you share that because I think that's foundational to what we're aiming to accomplish in Seeds. And as always, I think everyone's tapped into exactly what we are going to discuss already. So I think this is a perfect lead-in to one of our potential paths forward today, which here's our agenda real quick. So here's 3 different paths forward. You can see 4, 7, and 10, because looking at some of our last groups, I assume we're going to have 3 sessions within each one of these, but we don't end up doing that. So I think we got to prioritize and just pick one for today. But what you were leading into, Michael, I think is part of the roadmap. How do we go about growing this new economic system? What steps does that actually look like? Because sometimes I think we're focused on, what we look like when we're flying, and we want to see that reality today. So I think we're focusing on, things that are too far into the future that aren't actually serving us today. For example, trying to create circular economies with Seeds. I think that's fantastic. Let's do that from a pilot and, experimentation perspective. But like really expecting that to be the sign of health for Seeds right now, I feel like is maybe misplaced. Where a greater sign of health for Seeds is more of the dialogue that's happening, the conversation that's taking place, the understanding of how to organize and do governance and make decisions and, coordinate. Like all of that is much more rich. And I think part of the focus right now, because we're in the design evolution phase, that's way more pressing and important than, can I meet my daily needs with Seeds just yet? Which is part of that flying stage. That's when Seeds becomes the real actual alternative. And there's absolutely no reason for someone to be like, no, I don't want to step in. Is if they can already meet their daily needs, then we're flying, we're off to the races. Like it's, you guys get that. Cool. So anyway, that's the lead into the roadmap. So I want to talk about, what does the evolution stages of Seeds actually look like? What does it look to go from crawling, walking, running, sprinting, flying? Versus just trying to fly today. So that's one potential path forward. Another potential path forward today is what are we governing anyway? So it's getting back into where we left off last time, which was the introduction to the governance section. We could talk about that introduction and then just keep going through governance as far as the game guide is concerned. So this one's continuing on with the game guide. Sorry, not game guide, it is guide now, Seeds guide. The last path forward that we have today is governance. So this is talking about what's alive in governance today. So this is, one of those, what's alive in the community, what's most pressing that we could talk about today, and different ways that we could evolve how governance is happening and start crafting a proposal within Renaissance Explorers to take to the citizens today to vote on to bring in, Seeds Gov 2.0. So 3 paths. We talk about the roadmap, we go through the guide, or we talk about live governance today. So those are the 3 choices. I'm going to put this in the chat so that we aren't all confused. So we're going to smile, or the laughing emoji, laugh, if we want to go path 1, which is the game guide or guide. We're going to do heart if we want to talk about governance. Today's governance. So Gov 1.0, 2.0. And then what's another emoji? Thumbs up if you want to go to the roadmap. So just give you one more moment to think about that. Let me bring up another screen so I can see you all. And we're going to try a little bit of our governance here, see if we don't have some sort of unity. So throw it up. What do you got? You can put it in the chat too if you want to. I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up. Okay. Seems like the biggest one is thumbs up. So we're going to go over the roadmap. This is good because that's the expectation I set for today anyway. So consent proposals. Does anyone have a consent proposal to bring to the group? Nope, nothing. Okay, so explorer groups. Any sharings? Any explorer groups get together this week and have any harvest that you want to deliver?
Yeah, I might be able to say something about this. We started with an exploration group on how is it, like restorative justice, together with Mila. Anna was also there. Joost is also joining us, and there is a post about it on the forum, on the discourse, and there's also a group about it on the Discord. So everybody who wants to join, who is interested in this topic, please join us. So, and yeah, it's just really, really nourishing. And it's like, if I would say it in one sentence, it's really like, how can we look into the ecosystem to connect our minds and our hearts? Because sometimes the mind goes wandering off on itself, and sometimes the heart feels very lonely. and how can we kind of, yeah, have a good flow between both? So that's kind of what we are about.
Awesome. Thank you, Daya. All right, then what we're going to do is dive right into the roadmap. So our minimal viable map. Let me share a link to this in the chat for anyone who just wants to follow along on their own. And then you can leave comments throughout too. So I think if you're feeling like you want to leave comments and actually engage that way, then I recommend just opening it up on your own so you can go through it. Okay. All right, as always, this probably needs to be like highlighted, one of many. So what we're wanting to do here is co-create, this was really important, a unifying, not unified. So I want to clarify what I mean by that. Is the concept of a DAO is that you don't actually need one single and sole vision and purpose and mission and direction. For example, Bitcoin's decentralized, it's a DAO, and there's no central organization saying this is how we need to market Bitcoin, or this is the Bitcoin go-to-market strategy, or these are the tools we're going to build for Bitcoin. What it is, it's just a massive ecosystem all trying to show up the best way that they know how to serve that ecosystem. So what we need is something unifying, and that's what Bitcoin had early on too, is it had a unifying theme of creating a new financial system. That's what called people to it, at least in the early days. That's kind of why I was there. Is 2008 financial crisis happened. People knew, if they didn't already, that our old financial systems are broken, and that was kind of the rallying cry. That's a weird way of saying that, but anyway, that was the unifying message. So it didn't have a unified message at that time, right? And that's kind of what we're seeing with seeds. And Michael, what you brought up at the beginning of this is there's so many different groups that I think it'll be really it would be a disservice if we all tried to have one unified reason that we're here in seeds. But instead, it's better to have kind of a unifying message that we can, coordinate and get behind. So unifying message might be, a regenerative civilization or systems change. And every group that shows up to seeds might have a slightly different strategy on the best way they believe to approach that. So rather than saying we have one strategy to approach that, we're probably going to have, hundreds of different strategies existing within seeds at the same time. And then we're using kind of natural selection, some, strategies are going to, by their design and nature, attract more resources and energy behind those strategies. And strategies that are less successful will kind of, die off. So it's using a theory of natural selection really to derive strategy, rather than trying to, endlessly have meetings where we come together and try to debate till everyone's head hurts to try to come up with one single strategy, right? So anyway, I hope I made my point there. I probably didn't need to go on so long about it, but that's the difference between unifying and unified. And what I'm trying to do here is kind of meet in the middle. Let's get the minimum viable, that's why it's the minimal viable map here in the corner, right? Amount of wisdom on what could be a unifying path forward. So it gives some people a little bit of understanding what each stage might look like. And then of course, every group in seeds can approach, how they serve that very, very loose strategy at each stage. Cool. So what are we trying to mimic here? Just very basic ideology. I mean, there could be way more stages than this. We're just trying to simplify it. To talk about, look, it's not really easy or, useful to try to fly when you're a baby and you haven't learned to walk yet. So we can conceive of seeds in such a way that there's some things that we're just not capable of doing until we've passed other stages. Then I think it's a little bit helpful for us to view it in that way. Finally, this is not really focused on the tech at all. If you want to get a tech-centric roadmap of what we're trying to build as far as tools are concerned, then I would say check out Haifa's roadmap. Cool. Any major questions before we get going, or comments, feedback, before I just kind of run through this with a really high-level lens?
Yeah, maybe just a second, but maybe it's better to run through it first. It's quite an extensive document, right? Because I tried to look through it, I saw it, and I clicked. It's an emotional reflection, I think. I go there, I see the document, I'm already way behind on things I need to get done. And it's like I get overloaded sometimes with, again, such an extensive document. So I would like to have an introduction on, like, why is this document needed now? Like, what is the question that this document is an answer for? Or is it to raise more questions? So could you create a little bit more context about this before maybe even we go into this document?
Sure. I think a lot of different do's are beginning to form in seeds. And there's a very similar question that comes up very often when people join and they get here, they're really excited. They're like, well, what can I do? How can I help? This is so overwhelming. I have no idea what's going on. Like, what's relevant? Like, how do we even go about creating a new financial system? All right, you want me to go watch 30 hours of video to like maybe piece together my own story? Like, and it's very overwhelming. So this is to try to have one document that helps us create a map, is really what it is, that can guide how people might show up and think about how they can participate in seeds. So it's a unifying strategy. So people can look at it and say like, hey, we're in today's landmark. All right, then what's really important right now? If I'm going about and, creating the story for seeds, like what does that story actually look like? Financing the change. So this is me saying the story today is the seeds currency isn't necessarily something that's a better than free currency, right? Because the harvest isn't actually working. You're not actually getting rewarded. So it's not actually better than free right now and today anyway, it's just free. But the token's actually appreciating in value. So really, if you're looking at just self-interested concerns, it's better for me to make all of my purchases in fiat money because central bank money is losing value. So it's better for me to spend it today than tomorrow before it loses more value, right? Versus something like seeds, which is designed to go up in value. So right now, it doesn't even actually, behoove me to use seeds as a day-to-day currency. It just doesn't. I would much rather use something that's losing value. So that's why I don't think it makes a lot of sense for us to really focus on seeds as a currency outside of what we can learn through pilots. I definitely think we need to support the groups that are wanting that right now and getting momentum, but really using them as case studies. And for us to see, what's the best way we can go about building a circular economy and supporting that, and then creating blueprints to help other communities do that when we're ready. Because in my opinion, it's the run stage, which is post go live, that I think we want to switch that story from, buy seeds and hold on to it as a form of kind of investing into the change you want to see, into actually using it as a day-to-day currency. In order for you to do that, you actually need enough organizations and people on board, which is the point of Go Live, is to get that momentum on board with people willing to accept it. So anyway, so that's one example of why I think this document is really important for us to go through, to talk about what are we focused on today versus what aren't we focused on. Where's the best places for us to direct our energy. And then be able to have a map so that anyone who's interested in supporting seeds can show up, read this document, get a good understanding of what's going on here, what's important, where they might focus their time. And then they might even get that as an idea for setting up their own organization. So I think we're calling them public or global dues. But anyway, the organizations that are sharing the milestone payouts. This is basically a strategy document that helps them design their business plan. Because then they can come up here and say, all right, cool, the story for seeds is about financing the change. Well, let's put an ad campaign out there and talk about financing the change. And we'll tell that story. We want to create some documents about it, whatever. But that idea that this is what they can work on can come up through walking through this. Cool. And very intentionally, as I get through this, this is brief. I didn't put too much of my own reflections on what I think is important as far as strategy, because I feel like I want to build that with this group here. So I've only touched on a couple of areas, but I feel like there's a couple more that we could probably bring in. All right, Michael, you have your hand up, so I'll pass it to you for a second.
Thanks. Quick question in line with setting context. Is there any behavior that's happening in the system, the ecosystem right now, that you're hoping will be changed by this document? Very high level stuff.
This is a boring example, and I could be wrong here. Again, this is just my opinion on things. But all of the energy directed towards setting up marketplaces to trade seeds to be redirected towards a myriad of other things, but just not focus on doing that right now, because I don't think that's an important part of the story to be telling just yet. But yeah, I mean, there's 100 more examples like that, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to thank you, because it's very clarifying for me, the intention of the strategy, and also for this document, for this moment to building the roadmap. I think it's crucial for even for the local pilots, but for the movement. And I kind of bring that topic sometimes with some ideas to use platform as like catalyst with searching guides and building a database. And was thinking to build a working group, or I didn't know exactly where, but could be an exploration group, and also with movement building with the website and all the potential things that they could do. And also with in the Codex meetings, we was talking about it, and also with the wiki that has have been building, and how to integrate all these intentions and efforts to not overlap, but great focus. And I see the Renaissance Explorers with a good place, so I want to just yeah, positivity.
Yes, I mean, couldn't agree more. Apostle, and then I will kick this back off again.
So the document basically says that first part, when we're just inviting innovators, we are not marketing seeds as anything else than investment. So we're not trying to build marketplaces. We're not trying to build circular economies. We're not trying to make it usable, basically, because the risk is too high. Am I understanding it correctly?
I wouldn't say risk is too high. I would say setting an improper expectations, really, and probably a misdirection of our energy. For example, for most of Bitcoin's history, it has never been a good medium of exchange. I owned Bitcoin for almost a decade. I've used it 3 times as a gimmick. So it started off as a currency that's a day-to-day use, but everyone who showed up is like, well, I actually can't buy things with this. So, I think it's broken, I'm leaving. When Bitcoin really started getting traction is when people didn't look at it as a day-to-day currency. They looked at it as an investment. They didn't expect to be able to go and, walk down to their local store and buy food with it. They expected to hold on to it and watch the value go up. So since the expectations started getting aligned is when I actually saw Bitcoin took off, because people knew what to expect when they showed up to that community. So I don't want us to kind of follow that same trap. It's like right now, seeds are designed to just be a hedge against the failing system, meant to appreciate and value with adoption, et cetera. And we know that there's not a lot of organizations and folks accepting it as payment. So instead of setting that false expectation to expect that when you get here and then feeling like it's not mature and then leaving, we're actually letting them know what to expect at this stage. Instead of looking at a baby that's crawling and getting upset and be like, why are you crawling? Like you need to be sprinting, anyway, you get it. So that's what I'm hoping to accomplish here with this unifying strategy, is that we set the proper expectations with, what we're trying to do and how we're communicating. With all that being said, I definitely think it makes sense for us to hone in our energy on a couple of regions and set up regional economies and do that. But instead of trying to like broad sweep it everywhere, so, expect everything to kind of pop up at once, let's really hone our energy in a couple of regions and let them get going and then learn from that. Because that's the other thing that I think would be more harmful than helpful, is when people show up, put a lot of misdirected energy into a project, it doesn't work, and then they feel burned out and then feel like the project itself didn't fail. So if we set a lot of communities out there to go attempt to set up their own circular economies with seeds and give the expectation that that's what we're trying to do here, and they fail doing it, they're going to feel like seeds itself failed. But what instead we can do is let's set up these pilots, let's create really clear blueprints and roadmaps of how to set up a circular local economy, so that when we're telling groups that we're ready to do that, we have a blueprint for them to walk through so that they can be much more likely to succeed. So that's what we would actually, talk about, and the strategy itself is going through that. When's the right time to build the blueprint? Right now. When's the right time to deploy the blueprint? After we make it, right? But if we try to do what that blueprint is going to tell us to do too early, then we're going to have failure, disruption, and a lot of wasted effort, et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense a little bit? What I'm thinking?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I was just a little bit confused on the framing. This framing that you lay out right now makes perfect sense, because kind of like the pilots, they have to be like narrow in a sense, and they have to be good teams that are doing them in a sense. So the pilots themselves are part of the research and development of the cryptocurrency, right?
Totally.
So
exactly.
Testing it on the ground and having very tight feedback loops with the developers, with the designers, that's part of the R&D. And that's also part where the big risk is. So if we have like 1 or 2 or 3 working pilots that we see that there is value there, and we try it once and it succeeds, and then we try to do it the second time and it succeeds again, then there is something there, right? Yeah.
Let me make it more explicit here.
Yeah, so pilots and marketplaces can work, but in the frame of that this is an R&D and a high risk, and we are just figuring it out still. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And then instead of putting any effort into making a marketplace on our own, I'd say stage 2 is where we're really focused on collaboration. But anyway, we could be there right now too. I think it's much more useful for us as a community to instead try to get something like Etsy to use seeds than it is for us to build something like Etsy, right? Because a marketplace, for it to actually work, for us to enjoy using it, it needs a lot of features. And that's a whole massive project all on its own. So I think it makes way more sense for us to approach existing marketplaces and work to collaborate with them and direct our energy that way than it does to set up our own marketplace. So that's the type of unifying energy I want to see with something like this document, is to say, look, let's not waste our time on those things, because they'll come by design. If we set up all of those partnerships, then we have existing marketplaces that people can just use and then get behind and use those marketplaces. All those tools already exist. Something I really, really, really want us to avoid doing is rebuilding tools that already exist, when instead we could have just plugged them together. And something like this, unifying document is going to be able to help us see, what are we actually trying to build versus what already exists out there. All right, cool. So I'm just going to do really high level the different sections of each one of these categories I made. So again, real quick, we have 5 different sections, 5 different very distinct phases of seeds life.
I have one question.
Sure, what do you got?
I didn't find the raising hand, but this clarifies enough for me. But I have a question regarding the pilot projects. Are there already circular economies or projects who are trying out this that we know about, or?
Yes. I'm forgetting them off the top of my head, but ask that question again in the Renaissance Explorers Discord, and then you can just respond to the different pilots that are happening right now.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
But I know there's at least 3. Cool. So the main thing I want to be able to align on right now is, what is our primary focus? And I'm making it short words because we want to keep this document as short as possible so people actually can read it and it can serve its function. So we're not going to try to add too much length to this. So we are going to try to cut back as much as we can. Audience, innovators, who are we looking at right now? Oftentimes, again, I see us trying to design for the laggards or the late majority, rather than designing for the innovators right now. And we can change our design perspective as we go. Sure, we want to keep in mind the adoption life cycle and not completely, not consider them. But I think we can build a really, really strong community for a long time to come if we just focused on the innovators and people who are ready for systems change, right? And have the ability to actually really participate here. So I think that's something worth keeping in mind. The story for the seeds currency. So this is, what expectations are we setting for seeds as a currency and the seeds ecosystem itself as a whole? What do you expect when you purchase seeds? Like, what are you going to expect to do with it? So this is how we're communicating seeds out into the world. And I want to make sure we're aligning on a similar story throughout all the different communities, so that we're not providing one conflicting information. If half the group is saying like seeds is the best thing ever for spending and buying things with, and you can buy it everywhere and blah 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 in that story, and then people show up and people are like, actually no, there's nowhere for you to spend it, and seeds are all about appreciating in value and it's a form of investment, or then it can just be confusing. So anyway, what I'd really love for us to do is come up with some type of unifying story of what does it look like right now. And then what's the intended optimal financial behavior? Again, that's something, and these are a little bit economic focused and maybe considering myopic, but anyway, what's the best way for them to show up in seeds today? So when people are walking through this and saying, okay, what's the best way for me to earn value here? You're saying, yeah, I'll go into what they are later. The last one is the movement building focus. Sorry, not last one. Which is, how are we going about growing and building seeds right now? So this is something that the ambassadors can look to and say, okay, what are our priorities? And I put a really high priority, for example, of building and structuring the seeds public dues, because these organizations are going to be able to help scale our ability. So I think setting them up is a really, really high priority. Another high focus is proposal, financing, and funding. And this is from the perspective of our own governance. So this is citizens saying, okay, what are we wanting to vote on? Like, yeah, we're putting up proposals, but what criteria am I analyzing these proposals from? Next week, Analos is going to talk about, Renaissance explorers creating that thrivability index. So we're looking at proposals from the lens of thrivability. But from a general seed citizens perspective, how are they looking at those proposals? And this is something that we can unify around. So first and foremost is, what proposals have the greatest regenerative impact, et cetera. And this is going to change. So depending on the maturity of seeds depends on what we can actually fund and what our focus might be at each stage. And we'll get into that shortly. This is the last one that I put up. So the last one is primary funding sources. So who are we getting value from? So Michael, you've brought this up a couple times about, ESG index fund or ESG funds and the corporate requirement to, anyway, you've talked about a lot of things that I think seeds isn't quite ready for at this stage. And that would come in at later stages, and I'll highlight those as we go over it. And then the little thing here is just a magnitude of how much value are we expecting to flow into and through seeds at this stage? So it's expecting maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars in value in the current stage that we're at. All right, so what I'm going to do from here going forward is actually just go through a little bit more in depth each one of the first 3 stages, and that's probably what we're going to have to do today. But before I do that, I want to pause again and see if there's any major questions and this is a huge one, if there's any sections missing. So any major contexts that you feel like are going to be different from stage to stage that just wasn't present at all. Yeah, awesome.
So I did a quick calculation on the weekend of some of the metrics that we have for go live. For example, 1 million visitors. And at the current rate of visitor to citizen ratio, that means 50,000 citizens, which I really have no idea if we're targeting that scale for go live. I really have no idea how are we going to communicate or hear or, at that stage, Discord breaks down. Probably the discourse forum also breaks down. And yeah, just a reflection of the scale. I'm not sure if that is the best heuristic, 1 million visitors, or should we have like a better one? But this map is super useful to have and to orient around, but also just understanding that it might be a totally different picture like a couple of years in the future. There's no way to predict like early majority, even when we hit early majority, how this will look like. That was my point.
Sure. I want to do a little bit of a reframing there, because what I heard was if we try to plug 50,000 seeds into how we're currently making decisions and doing stuff, it's going to break down. What instead I want to say is, if we have 50,000 citizens making decisions, what's the best way to set up our governance systems to accommodate that? And that's what Seeds Governance 2.0, should and could be all about. So if we're fractaling governance down into dues, then we can handle 50,000 people, because we can have, 200 dues or whatever. But if we're trying to make unified decisions within Seeds at 50,000 people, you're right, it's going to completely break down, and we can't do that. So let's not consider that, or let's not design for that, which is what anyway, you get it. So that's what we're going to get into, governance section. I guess it'll be in 2 weeks from now. We're going to get into Seeds Governance 2.0 and talk about that from that perspective of how do we design from the lens of, we have 100,000 people making decisions. So we're going to take that as a premise whenever we approach Seeds Governance, is assuming that we have, maybe millions, right? And if it doesn't work at that scale, then we've got to redesign it. Toma. and then I'll get back into it.
I really liked the roadmap, and especially the way it is put like different stages of evolution as opposed of just putting milestones. That makes it really hard language. And also, I think it helps a lot to frame what we are inviting people to. Like, we are inviting innovators at this point in time. And then what are we inviting innovators to? If we invite them with the end vision in mind, we create frustration, because the jump between current reality to end vision is so dramatically big that people come and see, no way, this will never reach the end vision. So putting the 5 steps on an evolutionary language helps setting the expectations as you did. One question is, are we positioning ourselves in the state? So are we in the crawling phase now? Where are we in the process?
Sure. We are crawling. We're in the first stage.
Cool. So I think it's important for us to make it clear, and then setting up what is the next stage as opposed to the end vision. Of course, always putting the end vision in mind, so that give us the direction, but not the next achievement. And that is just to say that I really like the way the message is good.
Awesome. Yes. I love feedback like that, of where, what are we doing right? But I more particularly love feedback of what's missing and what are we doing wrong. But we'll have a breakout group for that. So for the remainder of this call, we got 40 minutes. What I want to do is I'll continue going through this map high level for the next 10 minutes. And I'll try to convey as much information as I can in that 10 minutes as possible. And then we can have a 15-minute breakout into groups, 15 minutes so we can get really deep into it, of generally anything, actually. So I'll let the kind of free flow of consciousness form in those groups. And then we'll have 15 minutes to harvest that, and then we'll close out for the day. Does that feel good, or does anyone have a radical shift to that agenda that they propose? Cool. Julio, if you're under like 30 seconds, then take it.
Yeah, just a quick thing that I feel missing maybe on the document. The requisites for moving between the phases. So what's how do you know that one is complete? So that's kind of framing I would love to see.
I love that one. So what would we call these things? Signals?
Criteria?
Yeah. Anyway, we'll come up with a cool name for that. Yeah, so definitely, I think that's a really good idea, is signals, landmarks, characteristics that we're looking for at each stage of development. Yeah, signals/characteristics. Or next evolution. This is going to be a little bit harder to define, and they are going to be very, they're going to be flexible at best. But yeah, I think we still can point out some things that we want to look to know if we're at each stage. And this is something that we've already been thinking about for a while, and I guess now is a really good time to finish it. Is what are the go live metrics, right? And to actually time them in right here, because that's exactly what that is the go live metrics are, the characteristics we're looking for to let us know if we are ready for go live and ready to start running now.
Yeah, so the signals, in a sense, they are like metrics. What are the kind of metrics we're looking for before we can move to the next stage? And it doesn't have to be super precise, but at least a range, something that says, yeah, this is done.
I am fully with you. I think that's great. So yeah, we'll add that to each one of the sections. Cool. So anything like that too, please bring it up in your breakout groups. and then we'll harvest it all at the end about things that we can add, and really anything at all. All right, so I'm gonna take this really high level. I'm gonna focus on just some of the things that I feel like are most important from each step. So we are in the crawling phase, and I really wanna set that expectation. We are a baby. We have a lot to figure out still. And there's a lot of evolution that's still going to occur. So I think it's really helpful to set that expectation when people show up to the community that it is chaotic, and a lot of things are going to change. So when people are like, hey, you know, the governance system's broken, so I think Seeds is broken, it's like, no, we actually know the governance system's broken and we're testing some things out, so we're experimenting. So yeah, it's really, really setting the expectations that this is an experiment right now and that it's going to change a lot. And that's important because we're setting that expectation today. But if Seeds is going to get to that maturity of being a viable alternative economic system, then it needs stability. We can't change too much later when people's entire livelihood are dependent on this financial system, right? So we kind of limit that ability to be able to have rapid evolution as we move through these phases. So again, I think a big story of Seeds, you know, is financing the change. So it's really like, you know, if you would like to instead invest into a nonprofit to try to change the world, how about buy some seeds? And if most people are looking at this as kind of like a donation to a good cause, where they also get some tokens that may or may not appreciate in value, we've completely removed the expectation that this is going to actually amount to anything. I think that's the most aligned value that we could be bringing into the movement right now. Something with very low expectations, because I think that's the most appropriate way to, you know, speak to the risks. The worst thing that could happen in Seeds, I think, is that if we get painted as an organization that's just trying to scam people out of their money. And the absolute worst thing would happen is that people put in way too much money than they could afford to lose. And then for whatever reason, this experiment didn't work. And, you know, a lot of people got harmed that way. So I think we want to avoid some of those harms by saying, hey, this is early. But that's also why there's that potentially high increase in value, because you're being compensated for that risk. The risk is high, which is why the upside is also high for the risk you're taking. I put in here because I want to, you know, really drive this home, is like, you know, letting people know, please don't convert your whole savings into Seeds. You know, if you're feeling really called to this, as some people have, they've shown up and been like, yes, this is it. This is the solution. I've converted all of my liquid capital into Seeds. And then I'm going to sell seeds every day to meet my basic needs. I really want to encourage people not to do that. That's great, but let's just maybe take it a little bit easy. Yeah, so anyway, that's what I think would be something to align on the story right now, and what's different from stories of more mature stages. And then what are some of the ways they could show up right now? So acquiring either through buying or earning through participating in campaigns or joining one of these public dues or whatever, seeds, and then just holding on to them. That's the optimal financial behavior, is to hold or plant your seeds. In fact, if you're committing a long time, then you want to plant them rather than just hold them, so you can get that bonus that may be coming up, right? So that's an optimal financial behavior, is actually holding it. And that's going to change later to an optimal financial behavior is actually using it. But that's not today. That's the after go live, when it's better than free, right? So I highlight that, you know, it's still preferable, you know, from an optimal financial behavior perspective, to spend your fiat money that's losing value over one that's gaining value. So finally, I really want to drive this home in the storytelling too, is that how we're distributing wealth right now is through the appreciation of the price of seeds. After go live, we redistribute wealth through the harvest. We're creating new seeds and we distribute it back out. Right now, we're distributing wealth by the value of a token going up in value. But that only works if you hold that token. So if people that we're wanting to redistribute wealth to, we're giving them, you know, 100 seeds today, and they sell those 100 seeds for $10 today and spend it, then they've missed out on the potentially, you know, $90 or whatever of value redistribution they could have gotten had they not spent those seeds, right? So I think that needs to be part of the story today, is that we want, especially the people who are the most impoverished of the world, to be able to hold on to their seeds. So whatever that actually looks like, so they can get the most value out of it. And yes, also certainly in these early phases, selling seeds for other currencies right now sends a weird signal because it is so immature. People are showing up and they're expected to buy into this, but they see a lot of people selling. They go, ooh, I'm losing confidence here because it looks like a lot of people aren't confident. But what they don't see is that maybe that's just a small number of people, but it sends the wrong message still. So anyways, this is what I really want to highlight is what's different between these. Movement building focus. Focus on structuring some of these public dues, getting them set up. Supporting the seed sale. So again, not circulation, so we're less interested in actually getting people to buy their basic needs with seeds and more interested in letting people know that buying seeds is a way to support this movement and support this experimentation and the development of these tools. A major focus is networking with other ecosystems. So I really want to highlight this because this is something I feel like we haven't done very much of. There haven't been a lot of alliance requests. We have way more campaigns than alliances, which is weird because there's so many different alliances out there that I know are right on the periphery of participating in seeds that haven't gotten alliance request yet. So I really want that to be a focus is let's get these other groups invested and let's give them a share of seeds so that they can get that value appreciation too. And they can feel a part of this and that they're having a stake in this change. And this is, Michael, you brought this up with all the different groups out there. This is our tool for doing that. All the other groups focused on systems change and regeneration. If they don't already have their own financial system built into it, then they're a perfect candidate for us to be able to come and be like, hey, let's ally. And if they already do have a financial system, then it's a different type of alliance. But either way, the ones that don't, that's a really simple partnership that we can bring them in here, figure out how we can plug them into this movement and give them a share of seeds, right? And then the last major focus is actually on running campaigns. So designing campaigns as a community, running them and distributing seeds to a lot of folks, which we're already doing. Proposal, financing, and funding route. So this is what types of proposals are optimal at this stage. And again, this is me going over all of this. Please leave a bunch of comments and feedback on the doc so we can really hone in on what our priorities really are, rather than just one person's perspective. So what I'm thinking is, let's always start with what's going to be the most regenerative. And then also, how can we invite people in? So as Apostle you kind of brought up, and as we all kind of know, there's only, there's sub 10,000 people in seeds right now. But I think we need to have, around, 100,000 plus in order to really start this experimentation where we're seeing what does, decentralized governance at scale really look like. We're not getting the full feeling of that because maybe we only have a couple hundred people that's actually participating in proposals. So we don't have the full, breadth of experience to be able to do our proper experiments with. So I feel like we do need to focus a little bit more on actually inviting people in. And then of course, alliance shares, as I was just going through. And then the final piece is, where are we looking at for getting most of our wealth brought into the system? And this is, individual regenerators. So individuals coming in and buying seeds. All right, so I'm at the hour mark. So I'm going to run real quick through the difference between 1 and 2, and then I'll leave it at there because it's really alive. It's today, and then we'll do our breakout groups from that perspective rather than going too far. So what's different from the current state that we're at into the next stage that I'm kind of seeing? And this is a really strong focus on collaboration and partnerships. So we haven't been doing that yet. And we're right close to landmark 4 anyway, if we're not already stepping into it. But it's focusing on collaboration, bringing in those other ecosystems that already have 1 million members, 2 million members, and partnering with them. And then us growing from a few thousand up to a couple million becomes really easy because we're just absorbing other ecosystems of members that already exist, are already bought into systems change, and they're just looking for more tools to support them. So this is where I feel like growth can happen really quickly. But what else are we focused on? Joyful onboarding. So instead of focusing our energy on building marketplaces, let's focus our energy on redesigning the Discord experience so that it can handle a couple thousand people and not break down. How does that experience actually look like? So let's be focused on really designing that onboarding experience to be fun, engaging, and to be able to give people the tools they need. And then managing that community growth. So providing better tools to be able to facilitate growth. And you see, this is still all pre-focused on anything to do with seeds as a medium of exchange and currency. which I'm going to cheat. I'm going to show you over here. So yeah, this is after go live where that happens, where we start focusing on seed circulation, getting people to actually use seeds to start buying things and start talking about economic transition. So this is when people can start moving their, liquid capital into seeds, and we would need to have basic things like food and energy starting to be met with seeds. And those are partnerships that we're working on right now, is food and energy anyway. So walking, I still feel like is, we're just crossing into the early adopters, but I still think we're focusing on a lot on innovators. All right, so now the story changes a little bit to, finance the change, where it's really heavy risk, but there's still a lot of upside, to now we're at 10 cents. We started off at a penny. So I think we've, the ability to have like 100, 200x is probably gone at this point. And maybe we're looking at, 10 or 20x or something like that. And that's to compensate for the reduction of risk that we've had. And I like this as kind of a catchphrase, like, a way of putting your value where your values are. So they're communicating in that way. So yeah, next stage is, it's still the optimal financial behavior pre-go live is the same. It stays the same. The best behavior is to sit there and hold on to them and wait for them to fully appreciate and value before spending them. All right, so the movement building focus, something that I think is a very stark difference between 1 and 2 is getting our public dues set up. So that was the main focus of movement building in part 1, was building and structuring the public dues. So one of the characteristics of that change is those public global dues. Yeah, is having those set up, because then the movement building focus then is on actually supporting the sale and making sure that those dues are all funded. And then in turn, what that does is then all the dues are getting funded to do the ways that they're showing up and supporting seeds. So Haifa has more capital to build tools. Samara has more capital to help people build more dues. So that's a really nice positive feedback loop. D Studio has more capital to put out more videos that explain seeds, et cetera, et cetera. And then still networking with other ecosystems. I think that's a really, really high priority. And then what you see here is this transition from where we were before to now is running local pilots. And that's really alive in the community right now, is redirecting our energy to start setting up those pilots and getting them going. Something else that's really different is, all right, yep, here. So venture capital coming in. So up until now, we've been focused on totally individual contributions coming in and supporting seeds. But now we're starting to have a number of conversations happen where large funds are looking to buy, tens of millions of dollars, or at least millions of dollars of seeds. And that's how they would want to contribute. And that could start being a pretty significant influx of value into the system. And what's really cool here that I wanted to talk about is, we can have VCs start making deals directly with the alliance.seeds. So I'm talking about setting up alliances where you might explore Extinction Rebellion and say, hey, XR, you guys have done an incredible amount of value towards the systems change. We're going to give you $100,000 worth of seeds to be really appreciative of that. But a fund might not have done the same level of regeneration. So how do they get their $100,000 or $1 million worth of seeds, right? They can actually come in and say, we're going to buy it. And then we can give them a particular deal. So that's something that the citizens could actually work out, is a fund can show up and say, hey, we're gonna put $1 billion worth of, $1 million worth of seeds into the milestone contract so that it's redistributed immediately to all the dues. And we're gonna put $1 million in there, and we want $1 million worth of seeds at a rate of 8 cents each flat or something like that. They can make whatever proposal they want. And then the citizens could actually vote on that to say, yep, we're going to allow you to invest in seeds at that rate. So that's where I think it'll be really cool, is that the citizens themselves can start making deals with venture capital funds. We've actually seen this demonstrated once in the crypto ecosystem so far with, doesn't matter, a side topic for another time. Anyway, cool. So I went over about 7 minutes. So we're going to be 13 minutes in the breakouts and then 10 minutes for the harvest. So I'm going to stop there. What I'd love to talk about in this breakout sessions is the general framing between those two stages. Does that kind of make sense? What's missing? What do we feel like might be really important for us to focus on in stage 1 versus stage 2, and what's kind of shifting there? Any general feedback that came up during my sharing of that? How do we feel? Pretty good? We can take a couple deep breaths, stand up, shake it out real quick, why I set up these breakout rooms. I will do 5 rooms so we have more time for sharing afterwards per room. All right, see you all on the other side. We've got about 12 minutes in the rooms.
Come on, Daya.
Oh yeah, I accidentally pushed leave. Oh my God.
It's okay.
Anyway, I think I made my point, most of it.
Oops.
I think the last thing I wanted to say that this is for me very much connected to the whole journey from visitor to citizen and how we want to approach that. And like, because there will be this different type of accounts dependent on the commitment you have into the ecosystem. And I think now having these exploration groups to talk about this journey should be very connected also to these topics. Like there will be people that we invite in without having them the need for a lot of knowledge for the ecosystem. And then there will be people who blah, 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 blah. Oh, we are recorded. Amazing. Hello, Mama. Hello, yes. Papi. I hope you're proud of me.
All right. Anyway, love you, Daya. All right, so we've got 10 minutes. I want to be punctual today. So if every group, I'm going to give you 2 minutes and I'm just going to mute you at 2-minute mark. So run on sentence and all, and then we're going to move on to the next so that we can all be able to share within our 10 minutes. Feel pretty good? So put your hand up if you are to be sharing. And we'll start off with whoever puts their hand up first. Right. Cool. Tina, take it away. You have.
Oh, wow. Okay. 2 minutes. All right. Well, okay. So I wanted to bring in as kind of an interesting way to plant a seminal seed that may not be sprouting until much later in response to your, hey, let's bring on alliances of marketplaces that exist. And here's why. Because marketplaces as they exist are embracing a very sort of extractive mentality through the commodification of everything. And so when we ignore the fact that we really do need to pay attention to what the functionality of markets are in a hyper local sense, that they have this kind of reciprocity within them that allows for this flow back, that it's got to be a new model. And that if we're looking for just onboarding others or expecting that VC is going to come in and sort of brace up these into the future of a market, that we're missing the opportunity to create something extremely valuable for data collection and whatnot when we're looking at hyperlocal. That it's a critical, like I think if we do that work now, or at least pay attention to it, that it's going to be easier for us to embrace what a true market looks like. That's all I got. Oh, and then the group, let's see, there was some concern brought in about sort of, are we crawling or are we learning to walk? And so the difference between like something that like a definition of what crawling is, or are we going to allow for like micro experimentations where we are doing more sort of like data collecting or allowing for failure kind of scenarios. Lovingly brought by Max, if he has anything else to say.
If he does, he has 15 seconds.
Y'all awesome.
Excellent. Yeah, we're definitely taking our first steps, crawling, walking right now. 5 seconds to spare. Julio, take it away. You got 2 minutes. Thanks, Tina.
Yeah, no, I think the main points that arose in our group were, well, first, it was very difficult to see the difference between the different stages. I mean, the thing about not having a clear way to measure that you finished that one and you're ready to start the next one, and that's one thing. The other thing that emerged was that maybe if we have a clear future vision, very clear future vision where we want to get in the future, and then have only clarity on the next step, and then a series of strategic guidelines for this next step, right? The one that we are now, and well, the next one, instead of having that many future predictions that we don't really know it's going to be exactly like that. So like focus on today and the next one, and have a beautiful, very detailed vision for the future that one. So that would help people to connect with that steps. So having like, 3 steps. And then the last one was that maybe not having marketplaces right now is, even though that was a strategy adopted by Bitcoin, maybe we don't want to use the same strategy in a way. So when we onboard a user to seeds, they get like 100 seeds or 200 seeds. If you say, hey, you should not spend that, you should hold to that, or maybe use that to plant or invite some. It disconnects them from the usage of that currency. So then in this group that we were in, we saw the beauty of having a place for you to actually.
The rules. Love you, Julia. We're passing it on to Melanie. I just want to make sure we're on time today.
Okay. We have, or I gathered 3 main points, with fourth one, which would be a high level one. The first one is we feel this is perfect timing, because we need that transparency and honesty to really show where we really are, to manage expectations. So thank you for putting it on right now. We have 3 things where we feel we need to work on. First, we feel the bioregions need to be strengthened to have somehow both going on with building it and going on with the movement, meaning we need to think about how we can fasten the process to get 144 people or citizens. And Irina, who was in the group with me, and I will sit together and maybe think a bit about that. Second point, we still need a solution for those who need marketplaces, which might be, again, a different topic because they want to have solutions. In my personal view, that's a separate cycle where we need to have other kind of resources in, like fiat money, but again, something I would like to spend some more thoughts on and come back with a kind of proposal. And the third one is, again, a Melanie problem, meaning I wanted to work on the document and couldn't find it because it was somewhere buried deep in Discord, meaning if we have these kind of important documents and developments, we need to be also, we have to look at the communication in a way that those people with strong opinion against what we are currently discussing and not the time to watch these have a chance to be somehow in the loop. That's all from us.
And right at 2 minutes, perfect. Thanks, Melanie. Did anyone else from any group want to go? Arian, yes.
Yes, Apostle brought up that it's probably a very long ongoing process of proposals and suggestions and aligning with it, and it will probably take a long time. And something we also were considering was the upscaling part and how we could manage actually this wide scale of people. And something that came up with this is also that the money flow will also come up with a specific point of power, like where a lot of money is, there also lies a great influence. And another point was that it's good if we spread them wide, but there also have to be like some kind of physical contact of people who actually need each other so they can exchange it, and a real circular economy. And we were thinking of maybe like, besides the bioregions, maybe we could create like smaller cohorts of people who really know each other in their regions and scale it up there. Something else that was coming up is, I think that's it so far. Yeah. Yeah, just some brainstorming.
Ooh. Was there
anyone has some suggestions from my group as well, you could speak.
Yeah, there's about 30 seconds left. Cool. Was there one more group that wanted to share? Nope. Cool. Then we're going to be able to end right on time today. This is perfect. Love that. So some closing thoughts.
I have an announcement to make. Can I? Okay. So we have our basic income form ready. So if you haven't filled that, check your email or open the discourse forum and find the linked post there. We also have the art contribution form ready. So if you prepare your art, please submit it in order to receive your award for it. And also for us to actually like start doing stuff with the art, organize it, maybe create a gallery or something. And also we got going the proposal 111 fund. But in order to be part of that, you need to be part of the @Renaissance Explorers group on Discord. So if you're not part of that group, if you're not receiving the notifications, please contact me and I will add you to the list. There is a secret channel that is visible only to the Renaissance Explorers, that actually you can put up your proposal 111 contributions there. We have a limit of 5,000 seeds per moon cycle per person. So you can contribute with a lot of things and receive award for that. And yeah, please check your email or check the forum for more information and links to all that.
Thanks, Apostle. Cool. Then closing up for today, let's focus on this particular document. I think it's probably the most important thing that I think we can be putting together right now to help unify and move this ecosystem forward. And then what I suggest is 2 weeks from now, we go back over this and we keep doing this a couple more times to really get on the same page of where we're at, how we're evolving, and where we're going. Maybe just one more time after this. But anyway, we can, so long. It was long, wasn't it? All right, well, we'll end it right now then. So yes, take it to the document and I will see you all throughout the week and see you in 1 week.
Is there a discourse topic anyone can share on the document? Or does it exist?
Great idea. I don't know if one's set up yet. So if you want to make one.
Yeah, I can set it up. Perfect.
Excellent.
Vote for gratitude on co-op.
Yeah. Okay.
For gratitude.
Yes, and go and vote on proposals and all of that fun stuff. Cheers, everyone.
Bye-bye.